Welcome back, Film Club. It's good to see ya. It's me again, Carson, here to talk about another pick that we watched this week. Did you happen to catch it? Did you watch 1991's classic, Daughters of the Dust? Because if you did, you were treated to a beautiful experience, just like I was. I celebrated Juneteenth for the first time, and I watched Daughters of the Dust on Juneteenth. It was a very special experience. If you have not watched the film, if you don't even know what I'm talking about, that's probably because you don't follow us on our Facebook group or our Instagram page where we tell these things all the time. I'm always posting whatever the movie's gonna be of the week, and I'll kind of post little, perhaps interviews with somebody, the filmmaker or something, some extra posters and things. Either way, it's the best way to kind of stay on track with me at least, and with the rest of us that are watching these Film Club movies every week. But Daughters of the Dust came out in 1991. It was directed by Julie Dash. Julie Dash, who's that, you may ask? Well, she is the first African-American woman to have a wide theatrical release of a film. If you heard me before, I said it was from 1991. That means that no black women had directed a movie that had a major theatrical release ever until then. And it is what it is. It's a shame because if the voices that we were not letting speak were anywhere near as good as this, then we were all robbed of a lot of great movies, because this one is absolutely gorgeous. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. The Library of Congress thinks that, because in 2004 they hit up Julie Dash and they were like, hey, we want your film to be in the National Film Registry because of cultural significance and aesthetic significance. Meaning that the fact that it was the first black female director to have a wide release film, that's partly why they wanted to put it in the National Film Registry. And then also for the Gullah culture that she managed to put in front of all of us on screen, and for aesthetic reasons, because it's just so beautiful to look at. It did win a cinematography prize at Sundance, where it did very well. Its reception at Sundance is partly what got Julie Dash to be this person, to carry this torch as the first woman of color to have a wide release. Have I said that enough times? It's important. It's important. I watched a great show on Netflix called They Gotta Have Us, and it's a ton of people that you would recognize. It's a ton of black Hollywood figures talking about what it's like to work in film and television as a person of color. And this film was talked about in that show. And I hadn't really heard of this movie. I saw that it was featured on the Criterion Channel as one of like the Black Lives Matter collection that they had put together. And it is still actually free on Criterion Channel, so whether you have a subscription or not, you can go click on this movie there and watch it. But that's where I saw a little picture and I was like, oh, that looks gorgeous. I should look into that. And then I'm watching They Gotta Have Us, and they did a whole section where they talked about this film and its importance and how it was actually marketed totally incorrectly. It should have been marketed to someone like me. Should have been marketed to people who were like art house cinema enthusiasts and a bunch of cinephiles, because it is a independent art house film. And that's not the kind of movie that everybody wants to watch. Not everybody's like, oh man, Andrei Rublev, 4-hour movie in Russian in black and white about a 11th century painter? I gotta see it. See, like someone like me and maybe someone like you, it's like, yeah, oh my God, wait, where is it in theater? I wanna go. And other people are like, please don't ever say Andrei Rublev to me. So, had this movie been marketed to the correct audience, maybe it would have been, nominated for some Oscars or something. I don't know. The Piano came out 2 years later and was nominated for like a ton of shit. But I digress. We don't need to wonder why this movie wasn't nominated for anything. All that matters is that the movie is now more available and is being watched by more people and is being more and more and more and more considered a masterpiece of American independent cinema. I will also say, Julie Dash, in an interview that I watched with her, she wanted to kind of tell this story of these people in turn of the century. It was 1902. They live on an island called Ebo Landing, and I think it's off the coast of Georgia or South Carolina. And this family, it's this culture of people, the Gullah culture. They've been living on this island, and I'm not sure, but there's like other islands around there, so perhaps there were other people. I don't know if it was just this one island. But they are getting ready to move to the mainland for the first time. They're going to move to the mainland and move up north. And so it's kind of like this big going away celebration, multi-generational. We're having a big feast. You know, the guy from Philadelphia who's got a camera is here. He's going to take a picture of the family. He brought a kaleidoscope. Wait, real quick. Okay. His name, that actor, his name is Tommy Redmond Hicks. And I just recently watched She's Gotta Have It for the first time, Spike Lee's first film. And Tommy Redmond Hicks is in that. And I was like, who is this guy? He's amazing. He was so good in that. And then, you know, cut to 2 weeks later, I'm watching Daughters of the Dust. I'm like, hey, wait, that's the same guy. And so I looked him up, and it turns out that he did a lot of like black independent film work with black filmmakers. And I just hope that, I hope everybody goes and watches this film and She's Gotta Have It. And I hope that we, there's so many fucking great actors in this movie, you guys. And most of them are women, because most of the characters in this movie are women. There's a character, Nana, and she basically holds the family history in her, I don't even want to say her mind, in her spirit. She has like the whole ancestral line locked in, and she is the knowledge of the community. And so while we the audience are watching this family and this community kind of say goodbye to their home, we're also kind of being introduced to old stories and old kind of folk tales and things like that. And as I'm watching this film and kind of hearing these stories, I'm just like, man, we as film audiences have been introduced to, and also like in literature and things, introduced to Greek myths and Native American folklore and Celtic and Nordic mythology. And for whatever reason, probably because we just talk about Africa like it's one big place and not a bunch of countries with a bunch of cultures happening. But there are folk tales and myths and things that have been passed down, but because there wasn't really recorded history for, slavery, a lot of these stories are gone. And so people like Nana were the ones who held on to this stuff and would talk to the family and to anyone who's at the party. I guess if there was ever a wedding or a funeral or a christening, someone like Nana would be kind of reinforcing the family history and the ancestral history. And so it was cool, really cool, watching. In this interview that I just mentioned of Julie Dash talking, she talks about how she wanted to tell this story in kind of a non-European traditional narrative form. So it has a little bit more, the form of the narrative, right, is a little bit more in line to like how these African folktales are told, which is something that, since I don't understand really, it was introduced to me just the other day when I watched this movie. I don't really know how to explain it. All I know is that since the film is told in a narrative form that is unfamiliar to audiences, you may have to pay attention a little bit more, especially right out the gate. They're speaking in a dialect that may be unfamiliar, and they're talking about instances and times and places that are not told to us really. For example, Igbo Landing, where this movie takes place. There's a portion of the film where we go visit Bilal Muhammad, and he tells the story of this slave uprising that took place at Igbo Landing, where the slaves took over the ship, and when they got to the mainland, to the land, the island, they walked into the water and killed themselves because they would not be enslaved. And as tragic as it is, it's actually a beautiful story of freedom. And so within the folk tale, these African men walked on the water, and the water spirit delivered us here, and the water spirit will deliver us home, was the idea. So though in history these men did walk right into the swamp or whatever and they drowned, that really happened, this sort of mythic quality has arisen out of that story. And on the real Igbo Landing, where that slave ship landed and where this uprising took place, in 1940, even though there was much protest, they put a sewage treatment plant right there. So, you know, it's important to watch stories about black people, especially if they're told by black people. I mentioned it the other day because when we did Malcolm X last week, and Spike Lee in an interview mentioned how much better The Godfather is because Francis Ford Coppola is an Italian American, and how it's like, duh, it's pretty easy to just put two and two together and be like, oh yeah, let's let this happen. So anyway, off my soapbox. Yeah, I also did want to mention that this film, I guess, unbeknownst to me, but was a big influence on Beyonce's Lemonade. Did you know that? Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But apparently imagery from Daughters of the Dust and another film, Eve's Bayou, which I have not watched, but it's on the list now. Imagery was used and pulled from these two films to kind of craft a lot of the imagery in Lemonade. So big ups to Beyonce for giving Julie Dash another platform for her beautiful film to gain some more audience. And though Beyonce did not bring me here, I am so glad that I made my way in front of Daughters of the Dust, because I just can't recommend it enough. Especially if you long for stories that are unlike kind of anything you're used to seeing, and particularly if you long for more women on screen. I will say, just real quick, Portrait of a Lady on Fire was like probably my favorite movie of last year, and The Piano is one of my favorite films that we've watched in this club. And what these three films have in common, the only thing they have in common, is two things. They're directed by women, and they're fucking breathtaking. So we can go ahead and find any and all opportunity to let more and more and more stories like this happen, because I will just say straight up, as a male, white American male sitting in the audience, I want to see this because I find it to be really, really beautiful. I don't have another word for it. But yeah, I love y'all. I hope you have a good time. If you get a chance to watch this movie and you listen to all this and you haven't watched it yet, it's for free right now on Criterion Channel. Go watch Daughters of the Dust. And then if you're even more curious, go watch that thing I was talking about, the They Gotta Have Us. It's great. I learned a lot. Maybe you will too. But yeah, we're gonna kind of keep going with some great picks. I already got one in mind for tomorrow, so enjoy. Like I said earlier, if you were not already, go ahead and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. You'll find out whatever weekly pick we're gonna do. And then be sure to like and subscribe to these videos right here. I'll keep them coming if you keep watching them. Even if you don't watch them, honestly, I'm gonna keep making them.